My story starts back in May of 2013 in Killeen, Texas. I was, and still am, a soldier. Back then, I was stationed at Fort Hood, living off-post with my pregnant wife. We had just gotten married and moved into a quadplex apartment. Quiet neighborhood, decent rent, nothing special. Everything was fine until around October. In our lease, there was this odd note in bold, "Do not go into the attic." It sounded cliché, like something straight out of a horror movie. Naturally, curiosity got the better of me. One evening, when my wife was out, I decided to check why. The moment I opened the hatch, I understood. The attic space wasn't divided. It connected our apartment to our neighbors through two trapdoor-style entries in the ceiling. The crawl space stretched dark and silent above both units. I shut it and didn't think much of it. But shortly after, strange things started to happen. Our master bedroom suddenly became freezing cold. Even with the heat running, the air inside was like ice. I thought maybe the windows were leaking, so I sealed them with caulk. It didn't help. I checked the vent. Warm air was coming through, but just a foot away from it, the warmth vanished, replaced by a chill that clung to the air. Eventually, it got so unbearable that we moved to the spare room, and just like that, the temperature felt normal again. A few weeks later, we bought 2 sugar gliders. Tiny, cute little things, docile by nature. We played with them all the time, made sure they were handled and socialized. But after keeping them in that spare room, they started acting wrong. They turned wild, aggressive, biting, hissing, clawing at the door like they were desperate to leave. Thinking it might be something about the room, we moved their cage into our bedroom. And just like that, they changed, calm again, playful, sweet. The difference was night and day. We brushed it off. Then came early spring. My son had been born that September, and he was about 6 months old. Things had been quiet, until one day when I came home from work. I distinctly remember leaving our stroller propped against the wall near the front door before I left, wheels facing the ceiling so it wouldn't roll. When I came back, it was in the middle of the living room, flipped the opposite way, wheels facing the kitchen. I asked my wife why it was there. She said she'd been cooking when she heard a loud bang, came out to see the stroller sitting in the middle of the floor, and decided to wait in the bedroom until I got home. She believed in spirits, ghosts, that kind of thing. I didn't. I just shrugged it off, moved the stroller back, and went about my day. But then, a few nights later, my son began screaming in his crib. It wasn't a normal baby cry. It was this shrill, painful kind of wailing that shook you. We thought maybe he was teething, but he was only 6 months old, too early for that. We rocked him, sang to him, did everything we could. Hours passed before he finally stopped. The next night, it happened again. This time our cat, Charlie, sat in the doorway of the nursery, staring in. His back was arched, fur bristling. I told him to go away because he was distracting the baby. He turned toward the kitchen. And that's when it happened. A loud crash, a squeal. It sounded like something kicked him. I grabbed my shotgun and cleared the entire apartment. Every door, every closet, even the attic hatch. Nothing. When I came back, Charlie was still on edge, pupils wide, tail puffed up. In frustration, I ran to the dollar store and grabbed a glowworm, one of those little plush toys that light up and play lullabies. I put fresh batteries in and handed it to my son. 15 minutes later, it went dead. I changed the batteries again in the living room. Worked fine, but when I walked back into the bedroom, things felt different. My wife was standing under the attic trapdoor, just outside the cold master bedroom. At least, I thought it was her. She had her hair down, was wearing the same blue and yellow striped shirt and jeans she'd worn earlier. She was facing away from me. I walked closer. "Babe?" Before I could touch her shoulder, I heard scratching from the sugar glider's cage in the master bedroom. I turned toward the noise, and that's when my wife screamed behind me. I spun around, and the woman under the attic was gone. The hallway was empty. My actual wife was behind me, pale, terrified. That night, the cat wouldn't leave the windowsill. His fur stayed puffed up for hours, and his eyes followed something none of us could see. To this day, my mother has that cat, and he still refuses to go near anyone except her and my stepfather. My wife told me later she thought it was a doppelganger, a spirit that mimics the living. A month later, we moved to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, but whatever was in that house didn't stay behind. Life after that fell apart fast. I deployed to Afghanistan 4 months later, and when I came home, everything I had was gone. My house, my wife, my son, even my cars. The divorce was brutal. I fell into depression, anxiety, and tried to end things twice. Years passed. In 2016, I met someone new. Things got better. She had a son of her own, and we eventually moved in together. We started keeping snakes, 5-ball pythons, breeding them as a small hobby. For the first time in a long time, life felt okay again. Until one night, while watching The Conjuring, things changed. We had surround sound, bass under the recliners, speakers all around us. In the middle of the movie, something vibrated on the counter to my right. "Was that your phone?" I asked. She shook her head. "Mine's dead." Then she looked at me. "What about yours?" "In my pocket." I rewound the scene, thinking it was just bass feedback. Nothing. A few minutes later, a breeze brushed between us. Not from the vents. It moved horizontally, steady, cold. She turned to me, wide-eyed. "Did you feel that?" Before I could answer, the lights in her son's room flickered. I told her maybe it was heat lightning. Maybe he was awake. But his bed was high, and we always heard when he jumped down. The blinds were closed, the switches out of reach. She nudged me again, tense now. I paused the movie, grabbed my phone, and pointed it at the stairs. She gave me the signal, and I started recording. The video lasted maybe 10 seconds. I didn't see anything at the time, but I kept it anyway. When the movie ended, we went to bed, shaken but trying to laugh it off. Around 3:30 a.m., I woke up to the sound of tapping. It was coming from the snake tank, like fingernails gently clicking the glass. Then came the footsteps, slow, deliberate, climbing the stairs. I reached for the shotgun under my bed. The steps stopped at the landing, moved into her son's room, paused, then turned around and went back down. I tried to wake my girlfriend quietly, but before I could, the steps came back up, again into his room, again back down. When I finally moved, I cleared the entire downstairs. Nothing. Doors locked, windows sealed. That night, I told them it was just a nightmare from deployment, but when I fell back asleep, I dreamed. And for the first time in my life, I knew I was dreaming. In the dream, I woke up on a concrete bed, gray walls, no blankets, my girlfriend and her son beside me. The house was gone. When I opened the door to the landing, I froze. The walls were covered in blue chalk writing, huge letters, messy handwriting. Boy! Only child. Young child. The stairs led down into what looked like rows of blue bathroom stalls, where my kitchen should have been. I called out, "In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, who are you?" Something crawled out from behind the stalls, a tall, thin, naked man. No genitals, gray skin, a stretched, black, gaping mouth, deep, sunken eyes, no nose. He smiled and said in this giddy, warped voice, "I am Rupert." I woke up shaking, sweating, and it happened 6 times in a row that night. When morning came, I called the local Catholic church. They refused to help. Said the snakes in my house were the devil's idols. We slept downstairs after that. A few nights later, we were out shopping for snake supplies. When we got home, as I parked, my girlfriend grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. She was pointing at our upstairs window. The light was on. The blinds were up. And someone, or something, was pacing on the landing. The figure was tall, shadowy, moving slow. I turned off the headlights. The figure stopped, turned, then slowly walked into her son's room. The door shut behind it. I was shaking. But I was done being scared. I ran inside, grabbed my grandmother's prayer cards, and started praying through every room, rebuking spirits, demanding peace. The air lightened. The cold faded. For a moment, I thought it was over. Until the candle on the stairs, one I'd kept for years, fell over and shattered behind me. 3 knocks echoed on the counter, mocking the Holy Trinity. I prayed harder. The next day, I showed the video from that night to a friend who worked in IT. He slowed it frame by frame. At first, it was just static. Then we saw it, a white shape on the stairs. It moved upward, turning toward the camera. You could see part of a face, hollow eyes, a gaping mouth, a hand gripping the wall as it peeked around the corner. It looked exactly like the thing from my dream. After that, things finally calmed down. We started sleeping upstairs again. The last time anything happened was in 2019 at Fort Drum, New York. My son was visiting, and after tucking him into bed, my wife and I stayed up talking. Around midnight, we heard footsteps climbing the stairs. "Brantley," I called out. "Go to bed." No answer. The steps stopped right outside our door. The handle turned. The door cracked open 3 inches. Nothing there. I turned to my wife and whispered, "He's back." She asked, "Who?" I said, "Rupert." Back in 2015, when I was about 10 years old, we had just moved to a small suburban neighborhood where our new house was still being built. My father was working overseas, so my mom, my older sister, and I stayed in a rental a few streets away until construction was done. From the start, I never liked that rented house. It wasn't old, broken, or haunted looking, but something about it felt off. It sat at the edge of the neighborhood, almost too far from the others, surrounded by half-finished homes and empty lots. Even in daylight, it looked lonely. No one ever stayed long in the houses nearby. Families moved in and out within months. It was quiet. Too quiet. Maybe it was just me missing our old neighborhood, but that house never felt like home. Still, after a few weeks, we got used to it. My sister started school again, and my mom filled the kitchen with the smell of her cooking. I told myself it wasn't so bad, but deep down, something about the silence of that house always made me uneasy, especially when I was upstairs alone. It was a duplex, living room, dining room, and kitchen downstairs, 3 bedrooms up top. If I yelled for my mom from my room, she'd never hear me. So whenever I had to grab something from my room at night, I'd run up, grab it, and bolt back down before the lights even had time to flicker. Maybe it sounds silly, but even back then, I was paranoid. Too many horror movies for a 10-year-old, I guess. Then came the night that changed everything. 2 months into our stay, I invited 3 of my best friends for a sleepover. It was summer vacation, and my mom didn't mind as long as we kept quiet after midnight. We spent the whole day playing games, eating junk food, and watching random YouTube videos until someone suggested we end the night with a horror movie. We picked Ouija, 2014, not our smartest decision. By midnight, the house was dark. We dragged an old mattress into the living room, shut the curtains, and turned off every light. My mom and sister had gone to bed an hour ago. It was just us. 4 kids huddled together under a blanket, whispering and laughing before the movie started. Now, if you've seen the film, you might remember that early scene where the girl is home alone. The power cuts out, and a single light flickers behind her before she becomes possessed. That exact moment had just ended when the power in our house went out, pitch black. For a second, none of us moved. Then we started laughing, loud, nervous laughter. Power cuts weren't that uncommon in the area, and it was probably just a coincidence, right? Still, it was eerie timing. We started joking, trying to scare each other in the dark, when suddenly, from behind us came a faint buzz, that sharp, stuttering hum that only an old fluorescent light makes when it's trying to come to life. We froze. All 4 of us turned toward the sound. The light was flickering. Not the ones connected to the main circuit. Those were all off, but that one. The one above the living room window, the one that wasn't even supposed to work. I remembered it clearly. A few weeks ago, a handyman had told my mom that when the wiring in the house was redone, that specific light had been cut off from the system. Not needed anymore, he said, completely dead. And yet here it was, flickering. For a few seconds, no one said anything. We just sat there, staring at it flicker. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. My throat felt dry, like the air itself had thickened. Then one of my friends whispered, "That's not funny." None of us had moved. None of us were near the switch. Then, almost on cue, the light steadied for a second, glowing fully, and then went out again. That's when we screamed, all of us. A single blood-chilling scream that ripped through the entire house. Mom and my sister came running down the stairs, panicked and half asleep. By the time they reached us, I was already at the front door, yanking it open, desperate to get outside. My mom slammed it shut before I could run out, furious and confused. What on earth is going on? We all started talking at once, about the light, the flicker, the timing, but she just stared at us, dumbfounded. She said she saw the light flicker, but thought we were pulling a prank. Boys being boys, she muttered. But she admitted one thing, that light had never turned on before. Eventually, the power came back. The rest of the night, none of us spoke. We just lay there, staring into the darkness until the first light of morning crept through the curtains. The second the sun came up, my friends were picked up by their parents. They barely said goodbye. After that, the house felt different. I refused to sit in that living room alone. My mom said it was just a power surge, but I knew better. I could feel something there. Weeks later, it happened again. Another power cut. My sister and I were out shopping when my mom called us, her voice trembling with excitement. She said the same light had come on again. But this time, she thought it was a sign from God. She started calling it God's light. She said it gave her comfort, that it brought light to the darkness. But I didn't buy that. Neither did my sister. We both knew there was something mocking about it. Something that didn't belong there. The months went by, and every time the power went out, that same dead bulb flickered back to life. Always the same one, always in the dark. Sometimes it buzzed softly for minutes before going out again, and every single time it happened, I'd get that same chill crawling up my spine. We moved out a year later when our new house was ready, and I swore I'd never set foot in that place again. My mom still talks about the light that protected us. I just let her believe it. It's easier that way, but I never forgot. Just a few days ago, 10 years later, I graduated college and came back home for a visit. One evening, I went for a walk around the old neighborhood. The air felt the same, still heavy and quiet. When I reached the end of the street, I saw it, the house. It looked almost untouched. Same peeling paint, same rusted gate, and behind the front window I could have sworn I saw a faint flicker of light, soft, white, and pulsing, just like before.